Well, you can actually, did you open on that, Al?
Yes.
Oh, that's terrific. The website, and that's the front page of our website, and it's www.hiddenmeanings.com. And, kind of proud of it because it seems to have paid off nicely with, as far as people getting the message. And that's really what we're here for. And as of when I left today, we had 321,000 people. So just 179,000. And we'll have but seriously, 179,000 will have 500,000.
And you can do the whole thing all over.
Right. And I remember you, Al Bianchi, that day you said, wow, if we could get to 10,000. Remember? But it's like everything else in life. Once you get it, it's nothing. Go on. That's why if everybody went to heaven, after about 6 months, they'd all be looking over the fence. What the heck's over there? I don't want to be here. I'm fed up with those heavens. This guy next door with his, I don't want to be. I don't want to be there. Oh my God. But anyhow, last week, it's going to be a good one tonight, I think, Albert. We're off to a good start. Incidentally, I wanted to tell you folks on television that we're here in Forked River, and it's Sunday night at 7 p.m., and so come down. Sunday night, 7 p.m. at the Village Green Shopping Center. Joan has taken so long since she's done the last commercial that she comes on saying, Sunday morning, 10 a.m., and I have a sign flashing on there, new time, don't pay any attention to the woman, no time, new time. I have to do that. We went to a Chinese restaurant a few weeks ago, and the person there, Joan was in, I had to go out to the car, come back in, and the person there says, you with that lady? I said, that's no lady, that's my wife.
That's good, though.
It is good, isn't it, Albert? But anyhow, last week we touched on a remarkable new revelation that placed, I think, into a more understandable context what we call God. That word, it throws me. I don't know about you. Because there is no such thing. Now, and they're all running for their stones as I said that. There is no such thing. That word I'm talking about. That word is actually the word good with an O missing. And that's what the word, there was nobody named that. See? And so then we had to balance it out, so we took the word evil, we put a D on it, and we got the devil. And that's what the whole thing is. So when you start talking about this, you have to, someday graduate out of the superstitious realms of religion that this stuff lies in, and try and raise yourself to what is it that we are referring to when we use that word, God. And we've never been able to find out, because I know in all of my years of trying to study and being in schools, religious schools and everything, it was a father, a man up in the sky who was a father and is going to give you cars and nice stuff and money and everything, And, then I got, I got mature, and so I started hanging out with mature Christian people. And then I learned that if you sit in their room and you raise a $10 bill, you're going to get 100 times back, 10 times back. And, you wave, hey. But the thing was, when you waved it, they came and take it, see? So not only I didn't get the 100 that they owe me, but I lost the 10 already. So, what is this? And so I never did find out, and nobody has ever, what does that word mean? Is it a man? Is it a person? What is it? But anyhow, what we came upon last week was something new, something different, and it is about a sound that is coming from the universe. And it's a sound that's so low that you can't hear it. Now, they have equipment, and we've evolved to a point where they have equipment, NASA does, so they could pick up, the vibrations and the sound and so forth, and so they know it's definitely there. But let's take a look at that just to refresh ourselves. And we'll look at this first overhead about this black hole. And this is from Washington, as you can see. Just move it over a little bit to the right. Okay? Can you say it now? Well, I mean, okay. Anyhow, it's a, huh? Oh, it's, yes, Daddy sang bass, Mama sang tenor. You know, that's what that is. Bass means you sing real low. Ooh, you know. Okay, anyhow, Washington said big black holes sing bass. One particularly monstrous black hole has probably been humming B-flat for millions of years, but at a pitch no human could hear, let alone sing, astronomers said Tuesday. You know what the problem is? That's back too far. That's what the problem is. That whole table has to come in a little bit. The picture has to be just a tad smaller, and it won't go over all this. It's just but, huh? Yes, that will make it smaller. Yes, you can count on it. You know, absolutely make it smaller. So here's the situation then, okay? This is what we have. A big black hole in the universe is singing bass. Oh. One particularly monstrous black hole has been humming B-flat for billions of years, but at a pitch no one could hear, let alone sing. And the interesting part about that is that what you'll find is that science is saying that the sound or this vibration from this particular black hole has taken over 200,000 years to reach us. So even though it has been humming this om, if you would, om, for billions of years, it wasn't until just now that it reached us. So now the sound is for us, you see, and it's important. So what we have to then think about is the nature of this. Is there any reason for a celestial object to be humming? Is there any reason for a sound, a low bass sound, to be generated or to be coming out of a black hole or any kind of celestial object? You know, and that's where I would go with this. You just can't leave and say, wow, and that's something. Yeah, so, okay, so what's for dinner? I mean, it's important. What's the sense of going to church and finding about creation and what we call God and all that, if when these things are discovered, we just turn our backs and, you know, kind of ignore them, go about our business and don't pay any attention? You know, there's something that we have to think about here. See, and that alone, the fact that a black hole is making this hum, that would not in of itself be a big deal. But what makes it so significant is this discovery that I'll show you now. And keep in mind when you see this one, this last line, that this black hole, this hum coming out of this black hole, is at a pitch that no human can hear. All right? That's the key to that. You cannot hear it. It's so low, see? So now if we go to the next one, I'll show you the actual picture. We'll take a look at an actual picture that NASA took of the vibration pattern being released by this black hole. You want to show it? And there it is. Now what's fascinating to me about this is that this is making a pattern. You know, there's a pattern made of this. And of course, you know, if you got closer, God, you know, who knows what it would look like. But this is a pattern. And when you look at the pattern that this sound has made, according to NASA, and you can see right down here, it's NASA, whatever the thing is, but this pattern that the sound has made, when you think about that pattern, then it gives credibility, to me anyhow, to people who say that crop circles are made by sound. Why not? Because sound of this type creates pattern. And this is a celestial hum. You know, I mean, it not only comes to lead us to say, okay, let's take a look at crop circles because of this. It also leads us to say, let's take a look at the word ohm because of this. If this hum creates this pattern, what might that ohm or low sound create in us? And that's what this whole thing is about. What happens in nature happens in us. You can't avoid it because you're part of it. You're a part of the electromagnetism. The universe is. That's what this thing called God is. And given that, we have to understand that if this sound makes this pattern, it also then has to be affecting us. In what way? You know, that would be something else we'd have to talk about. So it's very reasonable for me now to say the human brain, mind, is affected by sound. Something happens to you as a result of sound, as a result of note, as a result of a different tone. And that thought goes hand in hand with information that, you know, we've received here. And I want to show you something in the next overhead that comes from Manchester, England. Now, looking at, as we have looked at this pattern from this particular black hole, we've looked at the fact that this black hole is sending out this very low tone that no one can hear, sort of an inaudible tone. Now, having taken that into consideration, let's go to this next one, take a look at what this says. Manchester, England, okay? Mysterious sniffed out candles, weird sensations, shivers down the spine may not be due to the presence of ghosts in haunted houses, but to very low frequency sound that is inaudible to humans. Okay, now we just came through the fact that this black hole is making a sound that you can't hear, no one can hear. And here's science telling us that these very low frequency sounds that you can't hear can cause weird sensations and shivers and so forth. Well, let's look what they say. British scientists have shown in a controlled experiment that the extreme bass sound known as infrasound produces a range of bizarre effects in people, including anxiety, extreme sorrow, and chills, supporting popular suggestions of a link between infrasound and strange sensations. Now, put the two of them together. NASA tells us this black hole is putting out this low rumbling sound that is inaudible, okay? Here, these scientists in Manchester, England, are saying that these very low inaudible sounds cause changes in the brain-mind. So what I'm looking at, what you and I together then have to look at, is what is happening to us, what is happening to all life in the universe as a result of what we now know are coming down as these very low inaudible sounds. Dr. Richard Lord, an acoustic scientist at the National Physical Laboratory in England, said normally you cannot hear it. It's inaudible. And that's exactly what NASA has found coming out of this black hole. So two things are relevant that we've accomplished so far tonight. Okay? Two things are relevant in this quest that we have to discover what we call God. One, the human brain is influenced by very low sounds. Sounds so low that nobody can hear them. We have science telling us that. Two, we now have proof that the universe is sending out very low sounds. So low that you can't hear them. So it's our turn to be the target of this conversation, of this singing, of this angelic choir, if you would. You know? When you start hearing stuff like this, And then you start reading in the Bible about Christmas and angels singing. You start to put two and two together and realize what they're talking about. It's really true. Angles of light, which are, sound and light that comes down and comes in on an angle as it's touched by gravity, and it changes or it impacts. What we're discovering here is the way that this thing called God talks to you, changes us. In other words, there's now proof that this is possible, because here they found low frequency sound that you can't hear can change and have effects on people, including changing personalities. And that's exactly what NASA said is coming from this black hole in Perseus. So the influence of electromagnetism is no longer something to consider as possible. Now it's an established fact. I mean, I could argue the point basically with anybody. And I mean, there's nothing that's contrary to what the Bible says here. In fact, it supports this entirely. What they're telling us is that some kind of singing is coming from the universe, but it's in a tone below what we can hear. Now, when you see this and when you realize that we're sitting here and coming down now, we've discovered are these songs or these sounds or these notes, so low. Now, and then think to yourself the way you feel, what you know, what you fear. Is that responsible? And then you have to take step two and say, well, if so, what's the purpose of it? See, as we saw here, that the very low inaudible sounds have been shown to produce fear in some people. See? But all that is simply part of the greater truth. We are spoken to by God. We are influenced by God. And the secret of hearing God is to allow ourselves to flow in a harmony with God. But we've got to, first of all, be mature enough to stop this kind of references, realize, okay, you've got my attention. What are you talking about? What is this thing? And then you realize that there is an intelligence that permeates everything in this universe. And if you want to call that intelligence which is electromagnetism, if you want to call that God, then that's fine. There is such a thing. There's no question about that. But now we've reached a point where we are aware of the fact that it is trying to get our attention. There's this place called SETI in which they put up these big receivers and try to hear intelligent alien conversation. Well, this is alien conversation. Okay? These are sounds, and if it was just low sounds, I could say, okay, not a big deal. But when science tells us that these inaudible low sounds change personalities and have effects on people, then it's important to study it and to see, what is this? See? So over and over and over again, like I started out at the beginning, we're talking about this thing called God, that word that we've made up, and say, what is it? That's the basic question. And over and over and over, we have to ask that. What is God? How can you possibly flow in a harmony with that? How can you flow in a harmony with the sound that you can't hear? See? I mean, it's like last week we had all of this stuff here, hurricane coming. And it got to the point where in some areas the authorities had to say to people, you don't have a choice here, you're out. Because we're warning you, if you don't move, you could get killed. And so most of the people didn't move. And some people did get killed. Much was destroyed. But somebody had to tell them in advance that was coming. If there wasn't the weatherman and all these people would have sat there and they say, oh, looks like a storm coming. And the next thing they knew, all hell breaks loose and they're all killed. But somebody had to tell them. Somebody had to deliver a message to them, and that's exactly what I'm telling you this is. This is a message. And you have the choice as to whether you're going to listen to this or not. Okay? You know very well, just like a child, some things, if you don't know what it is, it frightens you. And it causes fear. It causes bizarre effects. If you know what it is, then you're looking for it. Say, no, it's okay. I want this. If you don't know what it is, and if you're just plugged into religion and different denominations and politics, then you're scared. And it seems bizarre. What is absolutely normal and what people should be submitting themselves to actually brings anxiety, sorrow, and chills because they feel something's going wrong with them, you know. It's always funny to me that we think that this kind of stuff is bizarre, or we think, oh, this kind of stuff is crazy, and it doesn't make any sense. I mean, you're going to be off your rocker if you get involved with this stuff. So we stay with the normal people, and they just knock down the World Trade Center, and then they blowing Iraq back to the Stone Age, and they got everybody dropping bombs and killing for as long as you and I have been alive. Those are the normal people. And so then you say, if I understand this, and if I start moving in and opening myself to this song, to this sound, then I would return actually to the norm, to that which is right. And there would not be a fear, and there would not be a shiver. There might be a shiver. I mean, you know, they talk about this kundalini, and you know, you get this feeling, and it's energy that flows in the nervous system of the body. It could be. But you know that harmony is now flowing to you from celestial elements because NASA has told us so. And they hear it. And it's saying om, or it's humming, or singing, or something. And it's coming in the form of electromagnetism, and that's what you are. Low, inaudible sound. Invisible light or energy that permeates every part of existence. And the central figure of all of this is the one we refer to as God. Well, what the heck is that? Is it a man with a beard sitting up in an office looking at a TV set to find out if you're screwing up? Or is it something really serious? Because you can't take, if you turn on religious people, you can't take it serious. But it is serious. What is it? What is it that is speaking now? What is it that is singing out for our attention, for us to listen to? Let's take a look at this next overhead and see what it says. What is it? Numbers 23:19. God is not a man, not a human being. So think. I mean, you're praying. You've gone to church all your life and you're praying, and you're asking God somewhere to do something for you, which in the most part, you know, when you think about some of the stuff we've prayed for, when I was a little kid, I used to pray that God would let the Brooklyn Dodgers win a game. I mean, you know, who else am I going to turn to here? I mean, I can't do anything. God is not a man, which means what we call God is not a human being, has no body, has no legs, has no head, no eyes, has none of that stuff. None of the stuff you have. See? It's not human. It's invisible. Look at this one, 1 John 1:5. God is light. What the heck is that? But then you have to move up one step and start to understand, what are they talking about? They're talking about this energy which is intelligent, this energy that loves, this energy that remembers, this energy that plans, this energy that understands, just like you do. You know, when your body goes to sleep and you get involved in all of these things you get involved in, what you call dreams, is actually that same light which you are. Remember they said Jesus is the light of the world. Jesus turns around and says, you're the light of the world, meaning all of us. That's why we're made in the image of God, the image and likeness. God is light. So we have then the right to take this away and say what we have to flow with is this electromagnetism that is universal intelligence. So maybe it's a little easier for you to take if I change the name from God to universal mind. Huh? Universal mind, universal consciousness is what God is. In everything. Universal consciousness permeates everything. And I can understand that now. Because when I was a kid, I was saying, wait a minute. God knows everything, Albert, and he's everywhere. How can he be everywhere if he's here? If you're here, you can't be there. But see, because that's the way I was taught. Was a man, but he was everywhere. But now I know he's not a man. And so then God is this universal mind, universal consciousness that permeates everything and is now singing to us. So we have an invisible, inaudible energy humming away with a sound so extremely low that it can't be heard. And yet science is now telling us that it is this very low sound that impacts the human brain mind. Now, come on. I mean, 2 and 2 are 4, and we've got it. The sound is coming that's low and inaudible, and science discovers that low and audible sound changes you. And you saw both of them right here. And you go to church, wherever you go to church from now till cows come home, and you'll never see it there. Okay. Now, it's very important what we're talking about because we're living in a time when people seem to be doing all kinds of weird stuff. Violent things without any justification other than making up stories that they're right. Oh, wow. He's with Al-Qaeda. He's got weapons of mass destruction. He's getting chemical weapons, and he's got the atomic bomb, and he's got 45 minutes. He's going to blow us off. And then so we're going to go over there. Okay, everybody. God bless America. Boom, 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 boom. Blow it all up. And then you find out, well, he doesn't have Al-Qaeda, he doesn't have weapons, he doesn't have chemicals, and he didn't have nothing to do with 9/11. So what do? Never mind, I need $87 billion to fix the place. And so what can you and I? This is weird stuff. A few guys get in an airplane and they come flying into the World Trade Center. I mean, this is weird stuff. And people are blowing themselves up. I mean, they really believe this stuff. I mean, it's one thing if somebody stands behind a rock and takes a shot at you and runs. These people don't do that. They come up to you and say, Albert, how about joining me for a couple of something in the cafe? Sure, kid. Boom, and he blows himself. Why do people blow themselves up? Because they believe the same junk that we've been led to believe by people who lie. I'd stop messing around with, well, maybe we were mistaken. Nah, you weren't mistaken. You lied. I mean, Bill Clinton, he lied. I did not have sex with that woman. Yeah, you lied, Bill. But that's one thing. But to kill 8,000 people, that's another thing. So you have to begin to ask yourself, what is going on that people are beginning to think and behave the way they are? And you feel it. Inside of you, you feel it. You don't know what in the world is going to happen to you, what in the world is going to happen to everything. I mean, every time you hear a rumble, you wonder, hey, is this? Nobody. And if there is something happening, and it is connected to that cosmic Om that we've heard, is this the appearance of this universal mind? Is this the appearance of the one we call God, descending on earth in a way that has been predicted by the Bible? You can turn around, you can walk out of here, but this isn't the kind of place you walk out of and say, well, that was a good service, the pastor was really good. Didn't they have a nice song service? Forget all that stuff. That's for socializing, that's for having fun, that's for getting out of the house. What I'm talking to you about is something that is so critically important that it is the actual catalyst for what is going to happen to you and everybody around you. And don't tell me anymore that, well, we've been waiting for this stuff to happen. You've been seeing things happen in a big way. So what does that mean to you? And what do you have to do about all of this? To realize the origin of this hum that NASA tells us, this Om, this inaudible sound that has the power to rearrange the brain mind, is to finally admit the reality of God without all of the religious superstition attached to it. What I'm talking about is the reality of the universal mind. Now let's go, and I want to show you where this thing is located, this sound that has finally come to us, this hum. In this next overhead, we'll take a look at it. The black hole that NASA was telling us about resides in the Perseus cluster of galaxies. I wanted to really get into that Perseus thing, but I just didn't have a chance. But it's located in that cluster of galaxies, located 250 million light years from Earth. In 2002, astronomers obtained a deep Chandra observation that shows ripples in the gas filling the cluster. These ripples are evidence for sound waves that have traveled hundreds of thousands of light years away from the cluster's central black hole. So they've traveled hundreds of thousands of years, and they've arrived here. It's the season. I mean, the Earth has traveled, and now we are moving from a season of the summer into the fall, and then we will travel into the winter and blah blah blah. And now in the same way, see, the entire universe moves, everything moves in that same cycle and that same pattern. And now here we are, after hundreds of thousands of years, this thing which was created to happen is happening. It has arrived at planet Earth, something that never touched us before. So there's one very important fact for you to think about. This light has traveled hundreds of thousands of years to get here. In other words, there was a time for this to happen. There was a season for this to happen. And it's right on schedule during the reign of Uranus and Aquarius. It has arrived. The thing that, we don't understand quite, in the scientific terms, what it is or how it is connected to the entire plan, but it has arrived. The sound, the hum, the ohm has arrived. And so when I realized, right on time, because of the changes in the way people are living and the changes in the way governments are and the changes in the way our mind is and the way we're thinking and the way we're feeling. And then I look at this and in this revelation of the sound, and I think back to the book of Ecclesiastes, which we'll see in this next slide. And in the book of Ecclesiastes 3:1, it says, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven." Oh, wow, what a good line. That's what Carl Jung would say. He says it's synchronicity. There's a purpose, a time that everything is supposed to happen. The fact that they heard this singing coming out of this black hole is not just an accident. It was supposed to happen, and it was supposed to happen now, and it has. There's a purpose to it. And the purpose is you. And so now you have to say, gee, do I want to be part of it? But is that true? Is there a purpose for everything in a time when things are scheduled to occur? It is true for the seasons on the earth, you know that. There's a purpose in all. I mean, pretty soon we're going to look out the window and where'd all the leaves go from the trees? There's a reason, there's a season, there's a purpose, and they will go on time. Weather changes. The patterns change and the weather changes. Well, the patterns change and you and I change. Life changes, the mind changes, the brain changes. And if there is a purpose on earth to summer, winter, spring, and fall, is it not reasonable to consider that there is a purpose above the earth as well? I would think so. So we look at the change in things, the change in everything in our lives, the change in the way you feel as to the way you used to feel, the change in government, the change in religion, all this crazy stuff. I mean, we just came through a period. You say, oh, well, what's happened? You just came through a period where the greatest, most powerful religion on earth was humbled to what? Exposure over molesting children. And much of it right next to the sanctuary. I mean, please. That's a change. And something was exposed. All of the stuff we're even seeing in government now, people being exposed, their motives being exposed, and you don't know what in God's name are we living with. Huh? And then when you think of that change, and when you consider how you feel, would it not be reasonable to consider that even the change in the way you feel is coming as a result of a strange, invisible force at work in the universe? And we are just now beginning to hear and to see the seventh angel, Eta Carina, and to see the Hourglass Nebula, and starting now to understand things that have never been understood before. I wanted to spend some time, over the weeks we'll go, I'll show you. I was reading something by a guy named Thomas Hightower. And he's written a piece called The Musical Octave that I think will open the doors for us to further understand just what we are and what's going on. You know, I was impressed by what he wrote, because he talks about this invisible realm that we occupy as beings of the electromagnetic mind. I'm not going to spend time with the whole thing now, but I'll pick and choose from it, and then, of course, I want to make sure I get his website on, you know, give him credit for this. I don't want to. But anyhow, let's take a look at what he says here. Just at the beginning, he said, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Remember that one?
Yeah.
What is the sound of one hand clapping? It's a koan. This koan from Zen can in many ways stand as a header for this treatise, which is his work, because my aim is to encircle the metaphysical properties of sound and music. Oh, wow. When I saw this, you know, and I know we sit here on Tuesday nights and we got Tchaikovsky or a Kataro or whatever, and we sit, and we don't realize the wonders that are taking place here as a result of that sound. You're not listening to music. You're actually being impacted and changed by it as you submit to the harmony of it. And so that's what this Mr. Hightower's aim is, to encircle the metaphysical properties of sound and music. That's a word you hear kicked around a lot now, you know, in this new age, metaphysical. Everybody's into metaphysical, you know. And that's basically what he's talking about, is what we've been talking about here. How does God contact you? That's metaphysical. How do you contact God? How are instructions from the invisible realm communicated to you and injected into your brain so that there is a change? How? Because, you know, it could change, you know, this invisible part of you, the electrical part. Yeah, but, you know, we're twofold. We're invisible and we're visible. We're spirit, if you want to call it that, electrical, I prefer, and then we're body. So you know, how can these instructions come? How can you pick them up? How can you see that you're flowing with this? I think the key word that Mr. Hightower used there, that metaphysical, he's trying to convey an understanding of the metaphysical properties of sound and music. And what I thought might be a good idea to take a look at that word metaphysical, because we hear it thrown around a lot. So let's take a look at it. Metaphysical of metaphysics, about the real nature of things. I like that one. You see what it's talking about? The real nature of it. This was interesting to me, and I put it there because this is having to do with a group of English poets of the 1600s whose verse is characterized by hard-to-understand metaphors and fanciful, elaborate imagery. Now, I'm going to have to get my hands on them, see what these guys are talking about, because the metaphysical poets are John Donne, Abraham Cowley, George Herbert, and Richard Crashaw. I've heard of none of these people. I haven't a clue who they possibly could be, but nonetheless, it could be pretty interesting. Has anybody ever heard of these people? Okay, all right, so you're with me. And then when we take a look at metaphysical, about the real nature of things, it goes back to the ancient archaic, which is a good definition too, supernatural. Supernatural. What does that simply mean? Outside of the realm of the five senses. Something that exists and is very natural, but is above and beyond what we consider natural. So when Thomas Hightower talks about metaphysics of music and sound, then we get an idea that what he's talking about here is something that sound and music do to you that is beyond the natural. And you know you feel that a lot. You're going to hear I know myself, I can hear a symphony by Tchaikovsky. I'm like, whew, I can just fly, you know. Sometimes you get down into the boom to the basement. Sometimes you're up into the temple. You can go to a Jimmy Buffett concert or whatever it is, and for an hour and a half, you forget all your crazy problems and all that, and you're jumping around because there's something in it. And that's what they're trying to tell you. So when the National Aeronautics and Space Administration comes and says, we have heard something that has never been heard before coming from this black hole, it's a low bass sound, like a hum. And then all of us turn around and say, Om, could it be? Why not? Om. And then you turn around with the same situation of that low, inaudible bass sound that's now coming down to us out of the universe, and science tells us low, inaudible sound actually impacts and changes the human brain mind. So we have the two things here. And so this Thomas Hightower comes up and he's writing this thing and he says, well, what I want to try to convey to people is the impact metaphysically of music and sound on the human brain mind. So I got to find out who those poets are, though. That's intriguing to me. I'm not familiar with the work of these people, but I think it would be considered a form of mythology if we could find out. And basically, that's what mythology is all about. And that's why we've stumbled so deeply in religion, because we've taken it all literally. I mean, and you know, it presents a terrible contrast, because on the one hand, you have people who are, you know, followers, they say, of Jesus, who is the ultimate pacifist, who wouldn't even break a bruised reed. This guy was so gentle, he wouldn't hurt anything, wouldn't touch anything. And they want they want him to come back and bring peace, and that's wonderful. Can't argue with that. But the conflict, since they take the book of Revelation literally, is the fact that in order to get the Prince of Peace back, they got to annihilate 2/3 of the people living here with atomic bombs. See? So you get a guy like Jack Van Impe, you know, with his wife Rexella, and he gets on there and says, Rexella, oh, Rexella, there's going to be blood flowing up to the horses, and there's going to be hundreds and millions of people are going to die, and the bombs are going to explode. And she says, oh, Jack, this is so exciting. Yes, Rexella, because Jesus is coming. What is this? But see, this is the problem. When you take this stuff literally, you do exactly what the Bible says. The Bible says, do not be a minister of the letter because it kills. And that's exactly what we have. We have people flying into the World Trade Center who took the Koran literally, and they killed thousands of people. And then we have presidents over here who take the Bible literally, and he kills 8,000 of them over there. And so we have memorials over here for the 3,000 that died in the World Trade Center, which is very nice. But we didn't give a darn about the 8,000 that died over there. Well, they're not ours. Well, then don't pray to this thing up there, because according to this great internal or eternal universal mind, they're all ours. Right? So there's a big problem. So we understand now that this sound has an effect on the human brain mind, and we understand that this sound is also coming now from celestial bodies. And so that is intriguing to us, so that we have to now start to learn, how do I flow in harmony? There's a theme that runs through the Bible that speaks of music. And now as we learn that there are sounds coming, low tones coming from celestial bodies and the effects of sound on the brain mind, we begin to understand more fully. Let me just take a look. I just pulled one out of the Old Testament. 1 Chronicles, thus all Israel brought up the Ark of the Covenant with shouting and with sound of the cornet and trumpets and cymbals and the noise with psalteries and harps. You can hear that crash and all this stuff. Why? Why is that in there? See? This is a spiritual book. This is a metaphysical book. It's not a history book. It never even happened, this stuff. So it's a metaphysical book. But what it's talking about is there is something that occurs to that invisible part inside of us when it is touched by sound. Something changes. And that's what science has showed us in the beginning of this lecture. That's what NASA is showing us, that there is now something coming, not from people marching along in the desert. There is something, a music, a singing coming down to us from the sky, if you would. And that's not an isolated theme in the Scripture. It's found throughout all the Scripture. Oh, you hear now, the sound is coming from the black hole. So low you can't hear it, but we know it has an effect on us. And what does the Bible say about, did you ever hear of Gabriel's trumpet? Is Gabe blowing the trumpet? Is Gabe blowing the trumpet to signal the end of things? Not the end like we're told. Wouldn't it be beautiful if it was the end of the bombings and the end of the people not being able to have medical attention and the end of people starving and the end of brutality against animals and the end of brutality against nature? Wouldn't that be wonderful if a trumpet and if the Om that's coming out of this black hole is saying, prepare, but I'm coming down and we're going to make these changes, and it is the end of things as they've been traditionally known. The end of what? The end of all of those traditional things that have caused so much torment upon the earth. And we have seen so much of nature's world affairs turned upside down. Churches being exposed, molesting children, politicians being exposed, lying about wars, and religious people all over the world being exposed for the things that they've done to one another, and yet the pretenses they made to be following this thing called God. Are we now at the time of Gabriel's trumpet? And is that the sound being heard throughout the universe from this massive black hole? A low note right now, a hum. Or indeed, it could be a trumpet. But is anybody listening? Listen at overhead 11, just another thing I pulled out of there. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder, Moses spoke and God answered. But before it happened, there had to be the sound. That's what I want to tell you about. What I'm talking about here is not something religious, not something New Age, which New Age is fine. But what I'm talking about here is science. NASA told us they heard this hum coming from this thing, this sound. And if it comes first and then by voice, Joshua 6:4. You ready for this one? For those of you who are familiar with the 7 chakras and so forth and so on. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and the 7th day you shall compass the city 7 times, and they shall blow the trumpets, and the whole doggone place falls down. Well, this is one of the great metaphysical studies, that one paragraph there, that one scripture there. Because it's referencing what we call the 7 chakras, okay? And the sounds that are attributable to each one of them. And the city here is this inside of you. The city set on the hill is the human brain mind. And the walls that cave and collapse are those that separate you from the garden, separate you from the temple, separate you from the holy place. And it is only accessible via meditation. There's no other way. Because it's inside of you. That's what the Jesus said. And so the trumpet and the sound becomes so extremely important. And now when I see the 7 and I see the trumpets and I hear about that 7 up there, and then I look at the 7 chakras which are connected to the nerves along the spine areas, and we look at overhead 12, and here we see, the picture, 1, 2, rising upward. Okay? So people have for so long said, well, don't go to that place. That's cult because they into all that chakra stuff and all that. So let me tell you something. There is in the book of Revelation a scripture that says that there is a book written, which is the book of life, okay? And the book is written within, which means within you, on the back side, which is the spine, and sealed with 7 seals. What the heck does that mean? Okay? That's in the book of Revelation, and that's what it's talking about. So you can go ahead and you can go back to church and you can study the same thing, you can sing the same songs, and you can play the guitars and all that stuff, and you can have a heck of a good time, and I have no problem with that. But brother, you better wake up to the reality of what you're experiencing and what is going on in this universe, in this creation. Because when all of these things which were written by Greeks and the ancient ones in mythology start coming true, then it's time. And so we not only see the 7 chakras, we provided to you the scientific proof that sound changes the human mind. Now the sound coming from space and acknowledges the 7. And it is no coincidence that we have in this place also been fixated on the 7th angel of the book of Revelation, who was discovered by NASA. And we'll take a look at Edda Karina, the 7th angel of the book of Revelation. And there is her wings. If you can see it a little bit, it should be a little bit darker. Let me see how that looks. You can see that all right. This is the 7th angel. Edda means 7th. And it has this appearance of an angel and all of the other things. But you know what was the most convincing thing to me that this was the 7th angel? When I read in the book of Revelation that it says the 7th angel, when the time of the 7th angel comes, it will be connected to the son of David. And then I looked at the astrophysicist who was in charge of the Edda Karina project, and his name was Chris Davidson. And I said, bingo, that's good enough. You know, I don't have to get hit over the head. I mean, it's obvious what we have here. And this is pouring out from its core at unbelievable rates, this light and this energy and electromagnetism. And in fact, recently in January, scientists found a ray touched down on Earth. And so the first scouting party from the 7th angel has arrived. And now the trumpet has arrived. And so what does it say? We go to the next overhead in the book of Isaiah, and we talk about this sound coming from the black hole. You inhabitants of the world, that's you and me, you people on the earth. When he lifts up that ensign on the mountains, when he blows the trumpet, you better hear it. And in Revelation, and I saw the 7 angels which stood before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. You better hear it. So we've put all of this together. The amazing and the horrendous things that we've witnessed, such as planes taking down the World Trade Center, the wars that we've been witnessing in our life, where literally millions of people have been slaughtered in one way or the other because of the wrath of one religion or one country. Right up to this very moment as we're standing here, right up to this moment as you're sitting here, young people of this country who should be home taking care of their kids or going to the ball game or going to jobs are getting killed for reasons that now nobody can even explain. And people over there, one of the interesting things, I've been hearing on television, well, you know, these terrorists are attacking our boys and we're going to root out these terrorists. And they interviewed one of these Iraqi guys and they put a thing over his face on the TV. And then what did the guy say to Albert? He said, well, wait a minute. There's a foreign power army occupying my country. And I am willing to give my life to drive them out. How can you call me a terrorist? Right up to this moment, people are being killed, both American and non-American. But they're out of sight and out of mind because, you know, we've got to worry about the World Series coming up. But look at this in overhead 15. This is just today. This is just today. This is an aerial view of Iraq's Abu Ghraib prison on the outskirts of Baghdad. 2 U.S. soldiers were killed there today and 13 wounded in a mortar attack. Well, that was yesterday, July 20th, 2003. For what? You know, every time I think of that, I think of young people in graves Their lives are over. For what? Well, they sacrificed their lives. Now, their lives were sacrificed. So it goes on every day. Senseless killing, politicians making up stories to justify the killing. And now, above all of this, there is the inaudible sound, the trumpet. Is it the last trump? The sound of Om echoing through celestial places, both seen and unseen. To me, come on, bring it down. But we come here, and we come here on Tuesday nights, and we sit in darkness. We turn the lights out. Well, because of the pineal gland, the single eye, it opens in the darkness. But in addition to that, I remember the scripture that touched me. It said, the people who sat in darkness have seen a great light. Okay, 5 minutes. And I know what that means. You know what that means. And the music plays as we sit in darkness because we know there's a connection. See? We know that when we flow in harmony with these sounds, it does something. It changes something in the brain mind. Though we may not totally understand it, we know now there is a connection between music and sound in the change of the human brain mind. Thomas Hightower, who wrote the Musical Octave, one I'll be studying for a while, makes another statement that I wanted you to look at now. And it's very interesting. For those of you who have been coming here for a long time, Albert, I think you'll find it interesting because he says the same thing. He says, here I'll focus on man in regards to music and sound. In this context, man, and I, that's saying human beings, men and women, considered as an entity with a cellular body, a mind, molecular body, and a soul, electronic body. I like electronic body, because there is no such thing as soul. Say, there's not. Soul and spirit are words that were made up in the Middle Ages to try to describe an invisible power that nobody understood. That's it. It's electromagnetism. You say, well, you can't say electromagnetism. Why? I have my old George Carlin records. These are just words. But, oh boy, people freak out over those words. How do the laws of octaves and harmonics apply to that being? What does music and chanting actually do to a human's body, mind, and soul, electricity? What happens to it? Something happens to it. But here's the interesting part. It's not just the case that we're finding this out. It's a case that we're finding this out now. Uranus is returning for his bride, Gaia, okay? And all of this then brings us the wild, unorthodox, if you would, electromagnetic tail of Uranus, which causes everything to go crazy and have an impact on all things on the earth. So the very question becomes more and more important to us because we meditate with music and sound here, and because now science has detected that the universe itself is oming, and we are beginning to hear it. When you're talking about the black hole, I read something and I came across it just at the end of this from the Christian Science Monitor, which I thought was a great description. Let's take a look at this. I think you'll like it. Out of a black hole's deep throat, a bass note. Isn't that great? Can you? I mean, you've heard it when you heard the Buddhist chant. Out of a black hole. See, there's another thing. You have a body that your mother and father made. I can tell pretty much what they look like by looking at you. You're not made in the image and likeness of God. You're made in the image and likeness of your mother and father. And if they didn't get together that night, you wouldn't, forget about it. But inside of your mother's womb at the 3rd month, an angle of light called a photon, an angel of light entered via the pineal gland, nested into this fetus, and then animated that and gave that life, see? And this here, life, then exists inside of each one of us. Like I've told people over and over again, if I say to you, raise your hand, Not one of you did. Which I thought was not very courteous. But if I said to you, raise your hand, it wouldn't be your hand. Your hand doesn't know. Do you know? It doesn't know. Your arm doesn't know. Kick your leg up. Does the leg know? Is it smart? Or is there somebody inside of this thing you're looking at that knows? The invisible electronic magnetism that is intelligent, that dreamed. Tonight, I tell you so, tonight all of you are going to go and you're going to put the car you're in now in bed. And when it goes to sleep, you're going to get the heck out of it. And you're going to involve yourself in all kinds of wild adventures. That's the greatest thing now. When I go to bed now, I don't go to bed to go to sleep. You have never been to sleep in infinity. You've never been asleep. Your body goes to sleep because it's physical. But electromagnetism, the universal mind, doesn't have to go to sleep. So you go out. So somebody says to you, hey, it's 12 o'clock. You going to go to bed now? No, I'm going out. I'm going to put the body in bed. I'm going to lock the body in the garage, but I'm going out. And boy, when you go out, you have some wing-dinger times, don't you? Staff writer of the Christian Science Monitors. Get this one, Albert. Astronomers using the Orbiter Chandra X-ray Observatory have discovered a powerful basso profundo, adding its notes to the music of the spheres. See? And so this says to you, you have two options. It can either be annoying to you, as music can be, or you can flow in harmony.